The quarterbacks, the 4 that are on a bye this week: Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, Jared Goff, and Davis Mills. The ones that probably matter the most have been Carr and Goff. We told you that you can drop Goff for Carr. If you can hold him, hold him. But the injuries that we're keeping an eye on still: Dak Prescott, Tua, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz. There are quite a few. Wentz should be fine. He just popped up on the injury report on Monday because the game is on Thursday. Tua, holding or dropping at this point?
He's droppable.
I would agree. And Ryan Tannehill, you could drop on his bye week unless it's a 2-quarterback or super flex league. All right, let's get into the waiver wire options here.
And you obviously wouldn't drop Tua in a 2-quarterback league either.
No, yeah. I mean, any of these guys, Goff, anyone that we've said, you're holding in a 2-quarterback or super flex league. Geno Smith is the priority at quarterback. So how much fab would you be spending on Geno Smith?
I said 20% earlier. That was aggressive. I bet you can get him for around 14%. I think that, remember, not everybody's chasing quarterbacks in your 1-quarterback redraft leagues, and in keeper leagues, same thing. But I do think you need to spend something to get him.
The best guy from a statistical standpoint on a bye is Jared Goff. The best guy from a name standpoint coming into the season is Derek Carr. So those are 2 starters that might have to be replaced. So yes, Geno Smith could be a priority for those fantasy managers, but I think people have been picking him up already. He's at 55% rostered. So that kind of tells you where the mindset is at. The guy I have next is Carson Wentz. You kind of have a sample size of what he is. 3 good matchups. He's been 25 or more fantasy points. 2 disappointing matchups against Dallas and Philadelphia, or tough matchups going in. 8 fantasy points in both those games. How do you think he'll do against Chicago on Thursday night?
I think it's an easy matchup. I think he should be able to put up good numbers. The one thing that I'm worried about is that the Commanders get their run game going a little bit more, because Chicago's run defense isn't very good either. And maybe that hurts the upside of Carson Wentz. But if you're just streaming quarterbacks and you don't want to spend 14% on Geno Smith, or maybe you just need a bye week replacement for, maybe Derek Carr is your guy and you just love Derek Carr, whatever. Wentz should be able to be snagged for like 3%, 4% of your fab. And that's a good plan B if you want to go cheap on Geno. And you say, okay, great. If I can get Geno for 5% of my budget, that's cool. And if not, you just settle for Carson Wentz and you use Wentz this week against the Bears.
Some other streaming options that you could be looking at: Jimmy Garoppolo, very good matchup against Atlanta. They've struggled against quarterbacks, at least 22 or more fantasy points allowed to 4 or 5 quarterbacks this season. Justin Fields, Dave, I thought is starting to look a little bit better. Allow him to throw a little bit more. 21 or more pass attempts in the last 2 games. That's clearly something that matters. So not in the 30 attempt range yet, which we like to see for most quarterbacks, but he's run for at least 47 yards in 3 games in a row. And he gets this Washington defense on Thursday night as well. We know that defense has been bad. So any interest in Fields or Garoppolo for this week?
I like Garoppolo better, but it's just by a smidge. And you could this piles onto the argument to not spend a lot on Geno if you're streaming. You could put in 5% on Geno, 4% on Wentz, 1% on Garoppolo, 1% on Justin Fields. You'll get a quarterback.
And clearly there's more upside with Geno rest of season. Even
that's why you spend more for Geno.
Right. But again, if you, as you alluded to, which I think is the right way to phrase it, if you're just streaming, you don't have to break the bank on Geno if you have, the quarterback that you like, or just by chance, the matchup happens to be bad for your respective starter. But I think if you're trying not just to replace the bye week guys, trying to replace Matthew Stafford, trying to replace Aaron Rodgers for higher ceiling type of guys, I don't know if rest of season Geno's better than these guys. We'll have to wait and see. Teams start to figure them out. But in terms of where they are right now, you clearly feel a little bit more comfortable, at least you should, with what Geno's given you, especially heading into week 6 against Arizona. And PJ Walker, we mentioned as a 2-quarterback. There are some 2-quarterback super flex league guys that could be available, mostly shallower leagues. PJ Walker might have the most long-standing opportunity because Teddy's going to eventually get replaced by Tua. Dalton's probably going to eventually get replaced by Jameis Winston, but we'll see how that one goes. Cooper Rush is clearly going to get replaced by Dak Prescott when he's healthy, and I would assume that Mac Jones is going to get back on the field when he's healthy ahead of Bailey Zappi. But there are some good streaming options in 2-quarterback and super flex leagues, but we could see PJ Walker maybe for a couple of weeks until Sam Darnold's ready because of the news that Baker Mayfield's going to miss some time. So just keep that in mind when you're spending your fab on PJ Walker in those type of formats.
And Walker out of Skylar Thompson.
And Skylar Thompson too. It's another good call.
Right, but Walker first, right?
I would take Walker just because the news that came out Monday that while Tua is not doing football things yet, according to Mike McDaniel, it sounds like Teddy cleared all the concussion protocols after Sunday. And so trending in the right, he's not out of the concussion protocol, but he passed all the concussion tests. I don't want to use the protocol word. He passed the concussion tests. He has not cleared the protocol yet. Knowing what the protocol is now and how things have changed, he may not be cleared to go by Sunday, but he is trending in the right direction. Tua still is kind of in this gray area, unfortunately. So my guess is we see Teddy in week 6. But yes, Skylar Thompson should be on your radar if you need a desperation 2 QB or super flex type of option for this week. At the running back position, the big names that are off on a bye: Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Damian Pierce, and Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. We hope to get Swift back after the bye. That was the news. So keep that in mind. The injuries, there are a lot of them at the running back position. Taylor, we're hoping to play. James Conner, we're hoping to play. We don't know the status of Damian Harris yet. Naeem Hines, clearly something you want to keep an eye on as well. So just keep an eye on the injury report there. The guys that we typically talk about in the check to see if available that are around 80% rostered or so, 85% or less: Brian Robinson, Alexander Mattison, Raheem Mostert. Those would be the 3 highlights. You got Michael Carter and Rachaad White as well. And then clearly Ken Walker is the one that everybody's chasing. So Dave, rest of season, Ken Walker, Raheem Mostert, or Brian Robinson? Who would you rather have?
Walker. And then, I think I want to say Robinson next. I love what I'm seeing from Raheem Mostert. Loving the usage, loving the production. You know what the deal is with him. He's 30+ years old, and he gets hurt pretty easily. And it's almost like my heart wants to take Brian Robinson, but I know it's the Washington Commanders, and I know he won't be alone in that backfield. So let's use my brain. I'll take it back. Let's put Walker 1, Mostert 2, Robinson 3.
If you were to tell me right now Mostert stays healthy rest of season, I would take him first. But I agree with you, based on the injury track record, knowing right now what Chase Edmonds is getting, benched for Myles Gaskin, and where that backfield's at. But yeah, it's too hard to say he's going to stay healthy. So I would go Walker 1, Mostert 2, Robinson 3, and you could start Raheem Mostert this week, with what should be a good matchup for them, taking on the Vikings.
Chase Edmonds is droppable.
Chase Edmonds is, well, as we get to the drop candidates, there we go. So the guys that I gave for this list are Antonio Gibson. That's probably more 10-team leagues than 12-team leagues, but you've seen his playing time go from 64% to 26% in week 5 in terms of his snap share. So not very good for him with Brian Robinson back. And the only thing that could change for Gibson, in my mind, Dave, would be as if they push McKissick off the field and give Gibson those pass catching opportunities like we saw in the game McKissick missed in the preseason, the one that everybody got so excited about Robinson. Remember, after Gibson had the fumble and they were putting him on kickoff returns, and then Gibson played in that pass catching role. And we saw it in week 1. He was great in their game against Jacksonville. But if McKissick continues in this role, Gibson's kind of in no man's land. So it's hard to say you're going to have to roster him, certainly in 10-team league.
There's another way. What if he gets traded?
Sure. Yeah. But you can't bank on that now.
Of course not. But I would hate to be the guy that cuts Antonio Gibson. And then I would wait through, it would make sense if he gets traded the Tuesday after their game on Thursday, if Brian Robinson has a good game. So just keep that.
But where does he go that he has immediate path to success?
How many injured running backs did you name?
The ones that are out for the season.
I don't know. I'd have to think
Seattle.
about
If he goes to Seattle, would you rather have Antonio Gibson?
No, I'd rather have Walker, and he doesn't fit into Seattle at all anyway.
But what I'm saying is, these are the guys that are losing players. Denver, do they make a move to go get him after they?
I don't think they give up a draft pick for him. It would be like a 6th round pick or a 7th.
Well, nobody's giving up anything for Antonio Gibson.
Of course not. Could the Dolphins do it, knowing how thin they are at running back?
Do they feel that they're thin?
Oh, maybe they don't. Because they've been running with these guys all week. All right, so there's a chance. All right, fine. Last team, and I suggested this at the beginning of the year. Arizona.
They probably could, but again, I think it would have to be a Connor rest of season injury, for them to make that type of move.
Mm-hmm.
So could be. I don't know if he's the guy that you're not using on your roster that you can drop, he's droppable. If you want to hold him and you have the ability to do so, then you do so. But at this point, I don't see a path to success for him in Washington. Chase Edmonds, you mentioned, clearly it's easy to move on from him. He's been touchdown or bust to begin with, and now he's not even playing that much because of what Mostert is doing, and they seem to like Myles Gaskin in the same role, at least for now. And then I did put Latavius Murray as a drop candidate. You can stash him if you want to, but I don't necessarily expect him to take both the other guys off the field. So carrying the 3rd running back for the Broncos, I don't know that's something that you need to do. All right, we talked about some of these guys, but let's get back to the waiver wire priority at the running back position. The way that I have it listed is Eno Benjamin 1, Dion Jackson 2, Mike Boone 3, Josh Kelly 4, and then the 2 IR guys, Gus Edwards and Damian Williams. Pierre Strong bringing up the back of the list along with Jerick McKinnon. So Clearly, Benjamin, we've said this, if there's the injury absence to both Connor and Darrell Williams, it's a great matchup against Seattle. He scored a touchdown last week for the Cardinals. Dave, again, if as of now, we're operating on no Connor, no Williams, how much fab are you spending on Eno Benjamin?
If we knew that for sure, I'd spend the 20% on Eno Benjamin.
But it could just be a 1 week situation, though.
It could be, but I need to win this week, and I might need a running back badly enough. And if that's the case, I'm happy to spend 20%. And there is some rest of season value for Eno Benjamin. It's not going to be pretty. It might be 10 PPR points max, but it's something. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it from, is that you don't spend 20% unless you're just absolutely desperate. I think that number should be north of 10%, though. And it's somebody that can potentially help you as a starter this week, or at worst be a bench guy rest of season.
You can't get Benjamin. Walker's gone. And as of Tuesday, we don't know if Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines will play. How much fab are you spending on Dion Jackson?
4%.
What if you need a running back, though? What if you're desperate for running back? Same situation.
There are other running backs, you name them, that might have the same type of upside as Dion Jackson does. Jackson's probably my favorite once you get past Walker and Eno Benjamin. But I don't know if Jonathan Taylor plays, I've thrown 4% of my budget straight into the dump.
Oh, it's a gamble. It's a total gamble, sure.
So,
but again,
that's why I'm not willing to gamble that much. And if I miss on Dion Jackson, boo-hoo-hoo, there's still Mike Boone. I don't think Gus Edwards and Damian Williams will necessarily help you in week 6, but J.D. McKissick might. Philip Lindsay might. All right. But we're getting to the point of running backs that you'd spend like 2% on.
Rest of season, who would you rather have? Mike Boone, Josh Kelly, Gus Edwards, or Damian Williams?
Mike Boone, Josh Kelly, Gus Edwards, or Damian Williams. I think I'm going to say Boone. I think Williams is probably second. Gus is third. And there's my list. But I don't really love any of them. I don't love Boone. I like Boone as far as like, all right, he's going to give me 5 points. He's a warm body that I might.
Well, I think the thing you got to look at it, though, is if there's an injury in their respective backfields, who helps you the most? So if Melvin Gordon gets hurt, or if Austin Eckler gets hurt, or if J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, there's clearly a potential league winner in all these guys.
Of course. I don't know if Boone's a league winner.
Well, he might.
Melvin gets hurt because they have Latavius.
I would agree, but he might be.
No. If we're talking about strictly league winners and stash guys, then I would flip-flop the order a little bit. I'd probably put Kelly first because I don't know what Gus Edwards is.
We don't know what he is, but we know what he has been. And when he has been given this opportunity in this offense, he's 5 yards per carry. He's a touchdown type of guy. You go back to the end of the 2020 season, he had 3 of 4 games, or 4 or 5 games, I think it was, with at least 10 or more PPR points. So, touchdown dependent, but could be as this offense continues to evolve with their running back situation, because I don't think we've seen exactly what they're capable of doing yet. Maybe last week was a good example of it with Dobbins scoring twice and getting 4 catches, but could be a league winner. I would probably take Kelly also, just because we know what the Chargers are typically capable of doing, but Edwards would be second for me.
And I don't think we should necessarily write off Damian Williams, because I don't think the running backs in Atlanta, I mean, they had a tough matchup against Tampa Bay, but I don't think they lit the world on fire. Avery Williams scored a touchdown. That's as good as it got for them. Algier didn't look so great. There's a veteran who could probably be pushed right into a primary role for the Falcons for however long Cordero Patterson's out.
Right, but it could just be 2 more weeks after this week, though, and Williams has still yet to be activated off the.
Sure, but if you've got the IR space, go for it. Grab them.
Yes, for those 2 guys, for sure, you should absolutely be stashing those 2 players.
Yeah, Gus
let's
first.
Move on to the wide receiver position, guys. The big name ones that are on a bye: Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods for what it's worth, Hunter Renfrow for what it's worth, Josh Reynolds for what it's worth. But again, we'll find out what the status is for Adams if he is going to face a suspension following the off-field altercation as he was leaving the field there at Arrowhead Stadium. The injuries, the ones that we're keeping an eye on: Tyreek Hill, we hope he's going to go. T. Higgins is considered day-to-day with his ankle problem. Michael Thomas is expected to play in week 6, but Chris Olave in the concussion protocol. Still waiting to find out about Keenan Allen. Drake London's got a knee injury that we're keeping an eye on. John Harbaugh said that Rashad Bateman could play this week. John Dodson, however, said that his hamstring injury, there's no timetable for it. The Bucs have said because of the knee injury for Julio Jones, they're going to take it slow with him to make sure he's ready for the end of the season. He's clearly somebody you can drop at this point. Isaiah McKenzie, Dave alluded to this, still in the concussion protocol. The Giants guys still banged up with Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney. Christian Watson's dealing with a hamstring injury. There's just a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. The guys that you should be looking at in the shallower leagues, George Pickens, 80% rostered. Michael Gallup, 74% rostered. And Tyler Boyd's 70% rostered. Dave, are you surprised that Pickens is not at 100% as of now?
Yes, he should be at 100%. I think he becomes a number 3 receiver. I mean, he's kind of a number 3 receiver now, but I think he becomes a reliable number 3 receiver before this season ends.
He's just been a great option right now with Kenny Pickett under center, 4 for 71 in their first half together 2 weeks ago against the Jets. And then he had a big game last week with Pickett throwing 50 times. And with the run game being what it is, you could probably expect a lot of pass attempts for Kenny Pickett moving forward. The drop candidates at wide receiver, Allen Robinson, Elijah Moore, Hunter Renfrow, Jarvis Landry, Julio Jones. Do you see any of those guys worth rostering at this point?
Only Renfrow if we find out that Waller's out for the year.
All right, so we'll see what happens there with Renfrow. I would drop him going into his bye week, again, mostly in non-PPR leagues. In PPR, if you want to hold him, I get that. All right, here's a priority list at wide receiver. Jacoby Myers, Alec Pierce, Darius Slayton. We'll start with those 3 guys. Are any of them must-start receivers in 2 receiver leagues in week 6?
Myers in full PPR, I don't think I've got it ranked that way. I think he's a number 3. Well, he doesn't play, so never mind. So no, Myers can't do. Wait a minute. The Patriots do play. Why did I confuse him with somebody who
Patriots are at Cleveland?
my mind's racing right now. Okay. I would start Myers as a number 3. Probably would not want to start him as a number 2 receiver.
In his last 2 games, 18 or more PPR points, and that's with 2 different quarterbacks, so it doesn't necessarily matter if it's Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. We'll keep an eye on the situation there, but clearly he's doing a nice job so far and did score a touchdown, which is very rare for him, so something that could be worth noting moving forward. Alec Pierce coming off a great game last week against Denver, looking like the clear number 2 receiver in Indianapolis, and Darius Slayton coming off a strong performance in London. Who do you have more faith in moving forward?
Pierce, because I like his offense better. If you can find an offense that's worse than the Colts, look to New York. I think Slayton had a nice game. We've seen him flash before. I think Pierce has some staying power in PPR leagues. And you know what? As for Myers, like, I kind of poo-pooed him as a starter in 2 receiver leagues. He as a bye week replacement, is he so bad? Definitely not.
No. I think he's I think I have him in the top 30. I'm sure you probably have the same thing. It's not necessarily a slam dunk that you have to, bench somebody. But I mean, at this point, when you're looking at guys like Adam Thielen, who's been, 2 good games, 3 bad ones, Deontay Johnson and what his situation has been. Trying to think of other receivers that are playing this week that are struggling. He's in that mix. He's in that starting caliber mix, so it's not a bad situation.
Thielen's
the only thing I'll disagree with you on,
been terrible forever.
The only thing I'll disagree with you on Slayton versus Pierce is he could be the number 1 receiver for the Giants. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson is yet to get healthy. Kadarius Toney has another hamstring injury. There aren't reinforcements coming, and so if what we saw from Slayton is a sign of things to come, he probably will outproduce Alec Pierce over the course of the season. But I would rather have Pierce as well. I think there's a higher ceiling for him, but it would not be surprising if they're close and the targets maybe start to favor Slayton a little bit more moving forward. So just something to keep an eye on there. But I do think he's worth adding based on what this Giants receiving core looks like and what the rapport seems to be with Daniel Jones. After those 3 guys, I have Devin Duvernay next. We don't know the extent of Bateman's injury, but he could return this week. However, without him last week, I thought he played really well against the Bengals. And the fact that they gave him 3 carries, they were manufacturing touches for him. So this could not just be something that's a Bateman replacement. Remember, he did score 3 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season, or first 3 weeks of the season. He got banged up in week 2 with a concussion. Could he have some staying power long term?
He could. He's a bench receiver. I would not put him next on this group, but he's really close to it. Good slot receiver for him, and they use him on deep throws, and they use him in the red zone. So there's a lot of positives to Devin Duvernay, but he's maxed out at 12 PPR points over his past 3 games.
Who would be next for you?
Zay Jones. He's had at least 8 targets in 3 of his past 4. He's had at least 12 PPR points in 2 of his past 3. I think he's the number 2 receiver in Jacksonville. I still believe this Jaguars offense is good. I don't think they're going to necessarily elevate to being one of the second best offenses. Like they'll never reach the level of the Bills and the Chiefs. They might not reach the level of the Raiders, but they're going to be solid. They're better than the Colts offense. They're better than the Giants offense. I'd put them ahead of them. And Zay Jones has been a factor. They've thrown him the ball quite a bit.
It's not a bad call. The one thing that Heath brought up on HQ yesterday, which I tend to agree with, is do we really have an idea of what this Jaguars team is? Because they lost a game in week 1 that they probably should have won. They won 2 games that they probably should have lost based on just the opponent and how things were. I mean, remember the Colts were still banged up in that game. All right, we lost Dave. I don't know where he went, so we'll hope to get Dave back. They lost, they beat the Colts without their receiving core healthy, and clearly they have the Colts number, so we'll see what happens in the rematch. They beat the Chargers. I think that was a huge surprise how that game unfolded going into Los Angeles. And then they lose the game in Philadelphia, which is probably the only one that you could say, okay, that's expected, losing to the Eagles on the road, second half of back-to-back road games. Then you get the situation with the game last week against the Texans, which was a surprise loss. So do we have an idea of what the Jaguars are? I guess we'll find out this week, but Zay Jones, not a bad receiver to add. Some other receivers we're looking at here, Khalil Shakir, again, coming off the 3 for 73 and a touchdown on 5 targets. We'll find out if Isaiah McKenzie clears the concussion protocol, but that's something to keep an eye on there. Josh Reynolds hopefully will be relevant when we come off the bye for the Lions, but we'll see what happens there with a healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown. Who knows if maybe we get Jameson Williams back into play there for the Lions at some point this season. Could be after their bye week as well. Dave alluded to this earlier. Rondale Moore playing really well last week, but DeAndre Hopkins is expected to return in week 7, so it could just be a 1-week situation for Moore, but a very good matchup against the Seahawks, so somebody you can use there. You have both Zay Jones and Marvin Jones, something to keep an eye on there with those guys, with Marvin Jones leading the team in targets this past week. Maybe he starts to get going a little bit for the Jaguars, but there's the receivers that you're looking at. Again, you can see the full list on CBSSports.com. The tight ends, the ones that are on bye, the 2 big ones are Darren Waller and TJ Hawkinson. The injuries, we're waiting to find out the status of Waller. Kyle Pitts dealing with a hamstring injury also. Pat Freiermuth in the concussion protocol. Dalton Schultz with the knee injury. Dawson Knox with the foot injury. Logan Thomas with the calf injury. And Cameron Brate in the concussion protocol. So you could have to find some replacement options at tight end. The guy to check to see who's available is David Njoku, 83% rostered. Dave, is David Njoku a must-start tight end rest of the season?
He's there. He's made it. The volume has been too good. You can't ignore it.
Dave, your audio is really off. I don't know what's happening.
Really? Okay. Let me see if I can fix it.
All right. So David Njoku coming off 2 back-to-back strong games. 3 really solid games, actually. 2 with 14 or more PPR points. So hopefully David Njoku continues to have staying power again. We'll see what happens when Deshaun Watson comes back, but that's not until week 13. So keep an eye on that for the end of season. But for right now, David Njoku should be rostered across the board. The drop candidates, Tyler Conklin, 2 miserable games with Zach Wilson, combined 8 PPR points, had no PPR points against the Dolphins, and no fantasy points, against the Dolphins in week number 5. Dawson Knox, while he's banged up, and then the Bills have a bye week in week 7, so somebody you can move on from there. And Mike Gesicki clearly has been disappointing all season long. Only 1 game with more than 4 PPR points on the season. Dave, the drop candidates I have are Tyler Conklin, Dawson Knox, and Mike Gesicki. Are you holding any of those 3?
Oh, man, you got to keep Mike Gesicki for those 2 fantasy points per week. No, drop him.
Moving on from those guys. All right, the tight ends priority list. I have Taysom Hill 1, but I don't know if I would rather start Taysom Hill or Hayden Hurst in PPR this week, knowing that Hurst has been very good, especially if T. Higgins is out. So if Higgins is out, Dave, I'm starting Hayden Hurst over Taysom Hill. Are you doing the same?
Probably. Because I thought he was like a check down guy on top of being someone that they designed plays for last week.
That's what Burrow's been doing.
Yeah. So I'm kind of intrigued by that. And I think they've got some trust in Hayden Hurst. He's scored in each of his last 2. He's had at least 11 PPR points in each of his past 2. So in full PPR, I think he's probably a little safer than Taysom Hill.
The third guy on this list, and this is where it starts to see a little bit of a drop off from the other 2, at least based on what their production has been. Evan Ingram, although he is coming off his best game of the season high in targets, season high in receiving yards. The last time he had a season high in receptions, which was 7, was week 2 against the Colts. Can he do it again against Indianapolis, Dave?
Oh, I think he might be able to. I like the volume that he got last week. We know that he's a good talent. He makes a bunch of bonehead mistakes along the way. If they have a hard time running the ball, and they probably will against Indianapolis, because the last time they played against Indianapolis, this is the Jaguars we're talking about, right?
Yep. That's what Evan Ingram plays for. Yep.
Right. So I think that I think that Evan Ingram is probably a decent start, probably makes the cut as a top 12 in full PPR.
He's just outside for me, but he's right on the cusp there. I have no problem if you want to call him a starting tight end for this week. The more deep league options, you got Cade Otton, Will Dissly, Zach Gentry, and Quentin Morris. We talked about the 1% and 4% owned guys. Otton's at 4%. Gentry and Morris at 1%. Gentry could get an opportunity without Pat Freiermuth. Morris can get an opportunity without Dawson Knox. Those 2 are more tight end premium league type of guys. Cade Otton, though, did have 6 catches for 43 yards, I believe, against the Falcons last week and could get another opportunity to have another significant target opportunity against the Steelers this week. So somebody to consider as long as Cameron Brate is out. And then Dave, Will Dissly's interesting because the Cardinals stink against tight ends, and he has 3 touchdowns in 4 games. Now, he did get outplayed by Noah Fant this week, but he's still playing more than Fant. So I would give a slight nod to Dissly over Fant. Do you agree?
I do, but they're both touchdown or bust types of tight ends. And when you're measuring those guys versus somebody like Taysom Hill, it's easy to take Taysom Hill.
Totally agree with that. And Dissly, by comparison, has scored more touchdowns than Fant, 3 to, I believe, none. So we'll see if Fant does find the end zone. But Dissly's been a red zone option for Geno Smith.